let me, before I answer your question, or try to answer your question, let me just extend our deep condolences for the three members of the team of Mayadeen, which were murdered recently, Fatima and her two colleagues. We in Greece were deeply shocked by this murderous regime in Israel, which continues to be outside humanitarian and international law. Now, going back to your question, I do agree with Professor Marandi, and I do see that we have a new type of wars in the 21st century where the empire, the American empire, is trying to achieve a lifeline for itself and its global hegemony, which is, of course, going nowhere as it seems. These new asymmetric wars, which both have tactical and strategic objectives, are not just fought in the battlefields, as we are used to read in our history books or we know from our experiences. Now, these new asymmetric wars from the West, from the American regime, from the American empire and its puppets, usually strike civilians, creating genocidal situations, ethnic cleansing. I'm speaking about their major ally in the region, the Zionist State of Israel, trying to destroy infrastructure, control world media, and cyberspace. So this is what they're trying to do, and it seems they're failing. And I'm speaking from the West. I'm speaking from a Western country. I'm speaking from Greece, a member of NATO. And the people of Greece in the latest polls have shown that we have the highest percentage of the 28 member states of the European Union in recent polls conducted by the European Union in Brussels, where 72% of the Greek people are against this imperialist war against the Iranian people, the Iranian government, against the genocidal strategy towards Palestine from Israel. So we have declared strategic objectives 9 months ago and perhaps years ago, since the Islamic Revolution started more than 2 decades ago. What do they want? They want regime change. They're failing. They have failed. They want to transform Israel into hegemonic nuclear power in the Arab world and in West Asia. They're failing. They want absolute control of the oil wealth of Iran and all its riches. They're failing. They're trying to restore monarchy or another establishment of another, let's say, controlled political government under supervision of neocolonialism. They're failing. They're trying to encircle the Russian Federation from the Caucasus after trying to destroy Iran. They're failing. They're trying to get deeper geopolitical, economic, and energy dependence from the European Union as a colonial vassal to the United States. They're failing because the people in the European Union are suffering now from this global economic crisis, which is not only an energy crisis, it's also a social crisis. It's a crisis of prices, and mainly it's a crisis of spiritual values in the West, where values of humanity are being lost. And this is something that we have to look upon. And of course, they're trying to globalize their new Monroe Doctrine, not only in Latin America, not only in the Western Hemisphere, as they're trying to asphyxiate Cuba, energy speaking, and they're failing in that because the Cuban people are rising up and holding on to their sovereignty and their independence from the empire. So yes, I do agree with Professor Marandi that a new world order is coming about. And it's coming about why? Because the war is not only being fought by the Iranian people and their government. This is a war of humanity, and Iran is in the vanguard of this war against the imperial West, which wants to establish in the 21st century and continue in their hegemonic global power. They're losing their world currency in the dollar. It's not the king anymore of currencies in the world. So in the 21st century, we have two decadent nuclear powers, the United States, an undeclared nuclear power, hiding behind lies and hypocrisy, which is Israel, which has never signed any nuclear treaty ever since it got its nuclear weapons. It's denying it's having nuclear weapons, although everybody knows that they do have nuclear weapons. So the so-called free Western world is a decadent world, losing ground in every level. So I do believe that the Iranian people and the Axis for the only for the defense of Palestine, but I do believe that it's for the defense of humanity, even though it does sound perhaps a little too maybe arrogant, I don't know, but I do believe that humanity is backing Iran, is backing Palestine, is backing the Arab people, our brothers and sisters for thousands of years, because we may belong to the West geographically, but for throughout our history, we were always a part of the East. And the Iranian people know that, our Arab brothers and sisters know that, the Lebanese people know that, and the Greek people know that too. Well, it seems that the United States empire and the so-called Western alliance is breaking up. And it's breaking up vividly in front of our eyes, even if the media, the mainstream media in the West does not show us that. But we can see this alliance breaking up very easily. First of all, we have the sentiment of the people in the European Union and the European continent as a whole that this is a wrong war, this is an illegal war, this is a treacherous attack by the United States during the diplomatic procedure that was going on in full. And in the middle of that procedure, there was a backstabbing by the United States towards Iran. So we are witnessing the death of diplomacy as we used to know it. And I don't know if Mr. Trump, because I do agree with Professor Morandi, it's very difficult to follow Mr. Trump and what he says in the morning or at noon or afternoon or in the evening. But I do see a serious case of political dementia from Mr. Trump, because he contradicts himself constantly. And he knows, and he says sometimes that this war is lost. He doesn't say it exactly like I say it now, but he says it between words. You have his main people in the government, Tulsi Gabbard, and the recent resigning by a high official from the government who completely say this is a wrong war. This war is going nowhere. So yes, I do agree that there will be a shock in the global market. We have not seen the whole extent of this explosion of prices in the West. And let me just say this in a very direct way. Global stock markets are measuring the rise of black gold, as they call petroleum. The rise of black gold every day in every news agency, in television or in the internet or in the press. We see the prices going up. Does the West have a measurement tool for the blood that is being spilled in Gaza and in Palestine? Do the Western cultural media and the powers and politics measure the deaths of human lives and innocent people and civilians being killed every day in Lebanon, in Iran, and everywhere in the region? Do they do that? Or do they just measure their losses in money and dollars and black gold? This is complete hypocrisy. And this is why this war has already been lost on its ethical base. Ethically speaking, before the first bullet and the first rocket that murdered 168 young girls in the school in Manab, at that point, they had lost the war already. Because the people in the world know who is wrong and who is right. And it doesn't really matter who is going to fire the last bullet. What matters is who is going to pay for what they have done. and they're paying it already. So yes, the United States government is going through a deep crisis. The European Union is going through a deep crisis. The NATO alliance is breaking up. Spain is an example of a sovereign country which voices something very simplistic and logical, that our people in Spain are not going to pay for this idiotic decision by the Trump regime to declare a war, not declare, to go on a war, and a treacherous war, because war was not even declared. That's another code of war which was broken in the last centuries or in the last thousands of years. Now they don't declare wars anymore. They shake your hand, and at the same time they stab you in the back. And this is part of the cowboy culture of the West, which we do not belong to. Even though, as I said before, geographically speaking, we are Western countries. But our values, our way of life, our spiritual values do not belong to Tel Aviv and Washington, who have broken every humanitarian law and international law in the world today. The correct way the United Nations should play their role, which they have been completely marginalized. Greece is a part of the United Nations Security Council in its 21-member larger scale. And we should play a better role, a role that gives a rebirth of diplomacy. Diplomacy has completely changed in our time by the regime, by Mr. Trump's regime and Mr. Netanyahu. I do remember in older days when we had apartheid in South Africa, the United Nations played a significant role in leadership of humanity in trying to bring about the end of this apartheid regime, and they did through embargoes, which were voted by more than 99% of nations in the United Nations. And we must remember that Israel never voted in favor of the end of apartheid at that time. We have to remember our history. So we have to revive the United Nations, the international organizations, the marches of peace which are going to take place in the next few days. People should rise up to defend their interests, peace, human values, and restore diplomatic, economic, and cultural relations with Iran, with the Arab world, with our neighbors in the Mediterranean and West Asia. The world is not going around Washington and Tel Aviv. This is a different world now. This is another century. And they have to forget about their old colonialist regimes and tactics and strategies. The world has changed. And I do agree with Professor Morandi that they have to be aware now that they have to confront the truth. They have to look themselves in the mirror. Mr. Trump and Mr. Netanyahu must recognize that they cannot continue to do what they're doing because they're just criminals. And the human race knows this. So this is how it's going to end. It's an influx of people, of governments, like the Spanish government. Others will follow, I am very, very sure, and very soon. And the BRICS nations also will play a more important role in trying to bring about a new, more just world of social peace, social justice, and a new international order for sovereign states, for sovereign people to live all together in peace. Peace is not just a word, it's a value. And we have to rediscover it, and we have to bring it about to all of humanity. And we thank Iran for being in the vanguard of this battle for humanity.